White pawn marches to e4. Black pawn marches to e5. White knight marches to c3. Black knight marches to f6. White bishop marches to c4. Black bishop marches to c5. White pawn marches to d3. Black kingside castling. White pawn marches to h3. Black pawn marches to c6. White queen marches to e2. Black pawn marches to d5. White bishop retreats to b3. Black pawn marches to h6. White knight marches to f3. Black rook moves sideways to e8. White pawn marches to g4. Black pawn captures pawn at e4. White knight captures pawn at e4. Black knight captures knight at e4. White pawn captures knight at e4. Black bishop marches to e6. White pawn marches to g5. Black pawn marches to h5. White pawn marches to g6. Black pawn captures pawn at g6. White rook moves sideways to g1. Black queen marches to f6. White bishop marches to g5. Black queen retreats to f7. White knight captures pawn at e5. Black queen captures pawn at f2 and gives check. White queen captures queen at f2 and breaks check. Black bishop captures queen at f2 and gives check. White king captures bishop at f2 and breaks check. Black bishop captures bishop at b3. White pawn captures bishop at b3. Black rook captures knight at e5. White bishop retreats to f4. Black rook captures pawn at e4. White king marches to f3. Black rook retreats to e8. White rook captures pawn at g6. Black knight marches to d7. White rook moves sideways to g1. Black rook marches to e7. White rook marches to g5. Black rook moves sideways to f8. White king moves sideways to g3. Black rook moves sideways to f7. White bishop marches to d6. Black rook marches to f3 and gives check. White king escapes check at g2. Black rook marches to f2 and gives check. White king escapes check at g1. Black rook marches to f1 and gives check. White king escapes check at g2. Black rook retreats to f2 and gives check. White king escapes check at g3. Black rook retreats to f3 and gives check. White king escapes check at h4. Black rook marches to f7. White rook retreats to g3. Black rook captures rook at g3. White rook captures rook at g3. Black knight marches to f6. White bishop retreats to e5. Black knight marches to e4. White rook moves sideways to e3. Black knight retreats to f6. White king marches to g5. Black king marches to h7. White rook retreats to e2. Black knight marches to d5. White king captures pawn at h5. Black rook marches to f5 and gives check. White king escapes check at g4. Black king marches to g6. White pawn marches to h4. Black knight retreats to f6 and gives check. White king escapes check at g3. Black knight marches to h5 and gives check. White king escapes check at g4. Black knight retreats to f6 and gives check. White bishop captures knight at f6 and breaks check. Black rook captures bishop at f6. White pawn marches to h5 and gives check. Black king escapes check at h6. White rook marches to e7. Black rook marches to f2. White rook retreats to e6 and gives check. Black king escapes check at h7. White rook marches to e7. Black rook captures pawn at c2. White rook captures pawn at b7. Black rook captures pawn at b2. White king marches to f5. Black king marches to h6. White rook marches to b8. Black rook moves sideways to f2 and gives check. White king escapes check at g4. Black rook moves sideways to g2 and gives check. White king escapes check at f3. Black rook retreats to g5. White king marches to f4. Black rook captures pawn at h5. White rook moves sideways to c8. Black king moves sideways to g6. White rook captures pawn at c6 and gives check. Black king escapes check at h7. White rook marches to c7. Black rook retreats to h6. White rook captures pawn at a7. Black rook moves sideways to f6 and gives check. White king escapes check at e5. Black king marches to g6. White pawn marches to b4. Black rook marches to f5 and gives check. White king escapes check at d4. Black rook retreats to f6. White king marches to c5. Black king marches to g5. White pawn marches to b5. Black pawn marches to g6. White pawn marches to b6. Black rook marches to f5 and gives check. White king escapes check at c6. Black rook retreats to f6 and gives check. White king escapes check at b5. Black rook marches to f1. White pawn marches to b7. Black rook moves sideways to b1 and gives check. White king escapes check at c6. Black king marches to f4. White rook retreats to a4 and gives check. Black king escapes check at f5. White rook marches to a5 and gives check. Black king escapes check at f6. White rook moves sideways to b5. Black rook moves sideways to c1 and gives check. White king escapes check at b6. Black rook moves sideways to d1. White pawn marches to b8 and promotes to queen. Black rook retreats to d6 and gives check. White queen captures rook at d6 and gives check. Black resigns and white wins the game.